It is the Midweek Rub. It is the preliminary final edition of Triple M Footy's Midweek Rub, of course, exclusive to the Listener app. And what a beautiful day it is in Melbourne. And alongside me, as always, on a Wednesday afternoon, I have Duck, Daisy and Damo in quarantine in Perth. Welcome, boys. But I must say, it feels like we're in some sort of fitness camp because, Daisy, you walked in from home into the studio today. Duck, you jogged in. We're preparing for summer, are we?
Yeah, sun's come out, Joey, and this time of year, obviously Father's Day was on the weekend. I didn't get a rash vest, so I'm going to have the shirt off at the pool at some point over summer, so time to get this slig that I'm running into some sort of shape.
Are you still a budgie smuggler, man?
No, I've
Not
never
anymore?
made it, only if I'm trying to get a bit of a tan. I said before, boys, I said earlier this year, I've only got 10 good summers left. And I want this to be a good one because last summer, I never had my shirt off for the whole summer last summer.
Right.
And this summer, I don't plan to have one on.
So you're trying to get yourself fit.
That's it.
And unfortunately, poor Damo, you can't get any real fitness work in yet because you are still in hotel quarantine. How long to go? And welcome, mate.
G'day, Joey. I've managed to get fortunately, an exercise bike into the room, although I'm probably not attacking it as much as, say, someone like Duck would in the same circumstance. And as far as I can tell on the app that I've got running on the Western Australian government here, I think it's the early hours of Friday this week that I come out officially of quarantine. So, yes, I am counting those hours down.
Are you a budgie smuggler man, or are you a shirts on man, Damo?
What do you reckon, Dave?
European trunk sort of setup, maybe?
Yeah, the old school boardy type operator. On the rare occasions I do manage to find myself needing to go into the water.
You'd be a smuggler.
No, certainly not. No
Never.
way.
Never
Down at
once
Dramana
stuck.
Beach, no, never.
In
Hey, and
Vegas.
we want to know, Damo, if you get out in the early hours of Friday morning, we're just wondering, us three in here would probably venture straight out as soon as quarantine. Are you going to venture straight out into Perth as soon as quarantine ends?
It's interesting. I've had a few moments of that quarantine anxiety in the last couple of days. It didn't happen for the first 10 or 11, but just a few moments. So, you know what? I actually might just set the alarm and just wander out and breathe the air outside the room and then walk back in.
Oh, that'd be nice.
That'd be nice. Can we ask why? So BT and JB, Channel 7, a big call team at Channel 7, we believe have started their quarantine over in Perth.
Daisy's going over.
How come you're not going? You're the big marquee man at Channel 7.
I've got a few things on in October, Joey.
In October?
Early October, 4 days after the granny.
Right.
So therefore, if I left to quarantine for 2 weeks
Yep.
prior and then having to do that straight after, I'd be away from the family for a good 6 weeks, which is not
good.
Not good.
Can't do it. Fair enough.
So not doing it, but what I will be doing is I'll be doing stuff here at the studio, and then I'll be in here for Triple M.
Beautiful. Channel 7's loss is Triple M's gain. We'll have Duck doing the special comments for the grand final. Looking forward to that one. Daisy,
But they missed the prelims, by the way. They missed both prelims. So they go over there for the granny, but they miss arguably two of the best games that you see.
we'll talk about prelims after, so looking forward to getting your take on the prelims and whether they are what people talk about, the theory that they are the hardest games to win. You've played in plenty of preliminaries. How many prelims? 7?
In a row.
7 in a row. So we'll get your take on whether they are the hardest games to win. But Daisy, before we get on to the footy news, because there's plenty happening, your hero of the week.
Daisy's hero of the round.
Yes, hero of the round time, and how good was the game? The Western Bulldogs and the Brisbane Lions. There was heroes everywhere in that game. Just a ripping game of finals footy. It started off fast and free-flowing, then it got down and tough and dirty. And in the last couple of minutes, obviously the Bailey Smith goal, and then my boy Zach Bailey up the other end. But when it was all tied up, there was a huge moment. I think the Dogs had just got in front. The ball goes inside forward 50 for the Lions. Charlie Cameron, one-on-one with Taylor Duray. The most nervous place you can find yourself as a small defender on arguably one of the most exciting and dangerous small forwards in the games. His confidence was up, and Doc Duray found a way to halve that contest, not let Charlie behind him, not let him out goal side. Knocked it over the boundary, and from there went on to win the game for the Western Bulldogs. So Taylor Duray is my hero, because if you do let the player out the back, and this is how beautifully it can be called on Triple M footy.
Took a bounce. That's too heavy for Thomas. Now it's a foot race. Fisher and Thomas. Tomer and Fishers. Look at the explosive pace by Thomas. What a magnificent pickup. What a magnificent goal. Boy, oh boy, where we? Did you see that? Dale Thomas. Unbelievable play.
Fisher? Where was that game? Was that Sam Fisher?
That was Sam Fisher. I think we were about 3 points up at that point.
Which granny?
No, it was a. I don't know if it was a final actually, but it was a very good game. And Mick set me to full forward.
Not exactly lightning fish.
Well, if you want to watch the vision, Dave, I'll prove that because I put about 5 metres on him in the space of 3. So
you're right about Jure, though. I mean, the fact that he was goal side, he was never going to get past. Because earlier in the game, Charlie burnt him off and made him actually look slow. We know he's not slow, but he made him look slow. So he was perfect positioning.
Cut an angle, did everything right. So to him to be in there, have the presence of mind to get everything right in that situation, he's the hero of the week.
And it can sometimes come down to the bounce of the ball. Didn't quite sit for Charlie Cameron. If it had, it might have been a different story, and it might have been Charlie Cameron who was your hero of the week. Damo, let's get straight into the footy news because off the field, the big story, of course, has been that of Lachie Neale.
Yeah, it has, Joey, and the curveball element to the whole story is the story, that being the revelation by Ryan Daniels here in Perth on Channel 7 on Sunday night, putting it out there into the public domain that this was on, that Lachie Neale wanted to, for family reasons, and that needs to be factored in as we discuss this, to head back to where his footy career started for the first 7 years of it, prior to joining the Brisbane Lions. And it caught pretty much every single person at the Brisbane Lions, Joey, off guard. I still, even 3 days later, haven't spoken to anyone who's prepared to admit any form of knowledge in advance. So there's that aspect of it. Neale himself's role in this is intriguing because he's got a management company, but the management on the ground with him in Brisbane wasn't aware of it, or at least that's what he's telling people around him in Brisbane. And obviously other people in his management company have clearly had a form of correspondence with the Dockers. Now, I'll let those parties work out and what they want to say there, but they didn't want that out either. It's not ideal for the Dockers to now be dealing with this publicly prior to it being announced. And clearly Brisbane's been spooked by it. Lachie Neale doesn't want to deal with this publicly. He went to ground deliberately for many hours until the day afterwards, and then eventually met with the club itself. And there's still a bit to play out with it, obviously.
So it's been handled poorly by Lachie Neale, but what is your take on him wanting a request to go home?
Timing not great, really poor from him in terms of letting that, and I guess letting people know that was his intention. People's lives change. His wife's fallen pregnant. She wants to go home to bring up their child. I don't have a problem with that. For me, it was about the timing of it. Straight after you lose a final, not great.
I can't believe the commentary around the reason why. You see Caroline Wilson, Gary Lyon, all genuinely teeing off on him for the reason. So yes, the timing, we all admit the timing's not great and how it's come out. But if you want to go home for family reasons,
for support,
whatever they are in this day and age, and especially with the times that we're going with COVID and things like that, I cannot believe how archaic the views are of some of these people.
Totally, and the fact that Perth has had it, handled it the best, and you can go over there and live a normal life for your baby and family and all that sort of stuff. Why wouldn't you?
And when he came across from Fremantle to Brisbane, it'd be put in his contract that they'd fly family members over at time to time. They'd think about it throughout the season. Hasn't been able to happen for a couple of years now. Heavily pregnant, first child, needing support. It just blows my mind how dumb some people's views are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've been staggered by the lack of compassion and empathy in this situation. I mean, and I get that he's breaking a contract, but when he signed his contract 3 years ago, he did not know we'd be living in a pandemic where essentially his wife's been locked out of going to her own home state to visit her family and friends. Now they're having a family. I would have thought in this day and age of the pandemic that we put people's welfare and all those sorts of things first. And if it's for family reasons and to have your first child around your family and friends when you haven't been able to see them for 2 years, I would have thought we'd be understanding and say, look, unfortunately, it's a big blow to the Brisbane Lions. It's bad timing. They're in the premiership window, but these things happen. Family's more important than football, and we just accept it and do the best we can.
Yeah, I agree, Joey. I suppose, again, just to get everything on the table, he did break a contract to leave the Dockers the first time. So I think that is part of the story here. But I'm with the three of you, that I'm compassionate with why he wants to do it on this occasion. I do, though, feel that there's no ideal world in these scenarios. You know that once you broach that topic with someone, it's going to get out, almost certainly. Now, it got out 24 hours after they'd lost their semi-final out in straight sets. He had an awareness it was going trying to get out. I mean, he knew that the Dockers were aware of the potential around this situation. I just think what he could have done and what he should have done was, even if it was the week leading into the elimination final, just sit Greg Swan, the Chief Executive Officer, down and say, Swanee, we need a conversation post the series, whenever we bow out of the finals, hopefully a grand final for us. But you need to be aware that my wife and I are now at a stage of our lives, we need to consider something. At least it then gives the club an awareness of it, as opposed to the complete blindsiding that occurred on the Sunday just gone.
Why as an industry do we're really hard on players that break contracts but not clubs? They break them all the time.
Yeah, they do. I think we are, though, because we can use the Treloar example, and we all went to town on Collingwood and how they treated Treloar.
He's one example.
Yeah.
He's one example.
Yeah.
I reckon there's plenty of others that clubs say, see you later.
Yeah, it's a big story anyway, and still plenty to unfold, Damo. At least it makes the trade period pretty interesting from that perspective. There'll be draft picks and scenarios flying around left, right and centre, so I'm sure you'll be all over that one. The other big news, of course, besides the news that Michael Hibberd might come back into the side. Duck's been all over this for a number of weeks.
Hardens them up a bit, I reckon.
The pig Hibberd, you like having him in the side prelim final?
I can't believe he was out of the side, to be honest. I'm wrapped. If he's back in... Ooh.
And unfortunately, that's because we believe Joel Smith, Damo, you'd know more, I believe he's done a hamstring at training. Unfortunately, he forced his way into the side and really forced him, the club to keep picking him because of his form.
Oh, so it's because of an injury?
It's an injury, yeah.
It's an injury for Joel Smith, yeah. And it is unfortunate. He got back in around 23 and then was very good in that game, was I think, questionable in the first final, Joey. I really do. The way it unfolded with Charlie Cameron's performance. So, again, it's an injury issue, but when you've got the luxury of having obviously Hibberd, Melksham, Nathan Jones, and Hunt, obviously, all potentially available to come in at the drop of a hat. It just goes to show how well off this Demons outfit is right now with the second last game about to start. And when I say second last game, for their perspective, hopefully for them, it's only the second last game.
Really good insurance policy too. If danger goes forward, he's got the sore hand. If he goes down there, there's a like-for-like matchup. We've seen Hibberd do it on Dusty. He gets those roles and he's able... big enough, strong enough. If someone goes down there, that's just sorted. So good for the Melbourne Footy Club and the coaching staff.
Well, the other big injury is Marcus Bontempelli, Damo, and as we speak on a Wednesday at about lunchtime, have you got an update for us on the likelihood that he will play?
Gut feel says he plays 100%. That's the gut feel only, Joey. Once the club came public with the fact there was no significant structural damage, you then just have the pain tolerance and the injury management component to it, and then the percentage of rat power that he's going to be able to play the game in. But if that's all the case, he plays. It's how he plays, and I'd be backing him in to be, still close to the Marcus Bontempelli he's been for most of his career.
Is it a similar injury to Corey McKernan's in '96, Damo?
It was PCL initially, Duck. They've been very guarded and cagey about what it is. I mean, Mark Rashudo on Triple M this morning said his mail was it was also a corked calf element to it as well. It definitely was knee. I don't feel it being the wobbly kneecap, though, Duck, that Big Corey had was going into the hyperbaric chambers with, wasn't he, way back then, almost hourly to get through for that game.
This is where the bye post this game comes in handy too. If the Dogs are able to go through, you nurse him through this one, you jab him up, you do whatever it takes to get him out there. Because if you do win, you then buy yourself a week to prepare for a grand final and get him cherry ripe for that.
Yep. And just quickly, Damo, the grand final, it's been announced 7:15 Eastern time, 5:15 Perth time. That's been well received.
Yeah, certainly over in Perth itself it has.
Really?
There's been some people in Melbourne.
Received here.
Yeah, why? Can you explain why?
Why? Because of the kids. That's why.
But what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Well, people are saying that kids don't stay up that late. Kids aren't up at 11 o'clock to watch the person receive his Norm Smith or get the cup presented. They're not up that late. It's too late for the kids. That's
it's
the big
grand
argument.
final. Yeah. It's a grand final, and I reckon parents.
Some of the great memories of kids.
The
kids run around. You have a barbie. You're looking. The kids are kicking the footy up until the game starts, and then they're eating a packet of chicken chips. having a lemonade.
I get that as well, but I mean, we're talking about compassion, empathy. But to be honest, are we going to base the grand final decision around the kids that can stay up late enough? Like, it's every major sporting event in the world is at night time.
A lot of kids.
So what do the kids miss out?
We all grew up watching the grand final, didn't you? Even in Wagga Wagga, we got it down there. Yep. Sale of the century in the grand final. That's what we got.
What time would you have as the ideal time for a grand final?
Ideal time for me, it would have been a 4 o'clock start in Perth, 6 o'clock here. would have been ideal for
But
me.
you've then got issues with the host broadcaster, Duck.
If you wanted lights, that's all. I know there's a lot of reasons why, Damo. I'm just saying. He said my ideal. That's my ideal.
Yeah, fair enough. I reckon, Daisy, some of the great memories for kids are when your parents let you stay up late. And I reckon an AFL Grand Final fits that category probably more than anything else.
I was a dozer. I'd doze off.
Oh, there you go. Well, let's hope for the kids' sake it's a cracking grand final and they stay awake and they get to see the medal presentation. But after this, we're going to get into your duck dive quick five. We'll get to your thoughts.
Dozer. Dozer and chicken chips. What has happened to this show?
Think about the little nab kids that go out and give the medal.
They can have a nap during the day.
They'll fall asleep and put the medal over the
They
neck.
can have an afternoon nap like you do.
Come
They'll
on,
be right.
poor little nab kids won't even be
Look,
able
Duck,
to
there's
stay up.
nothing for them to do the next day in Melbourne anyway, is there, unfortunately, for right now?
Poor nab kids.
It's a Saturday night. They'll be right. They can stay up late. Before we get into the duck dive quick five, just some breaking news, Daisy. Sorry, Damo, I've just found this one. I've brought this to the table. Luke Parker has just re-signed for 4 years to stay at the Sydney Swans, so he is off the market. Which,
Good news.
Good news for the Swans, absolutely.
He's one of their heart and soul players, been a super player, won their BNF, deserves the 4 years for me.
Yeah, 3-time best and fairest winner, had another cracking season, and you'd think the way the Sydney Swans are travelling, you'll be playing finals for the next few years. Hey, let's get into this one. It's Daisy's favourite segment.
On the Midweek Rub, it's time for Duck Dive.
I'm good from the waist down.
Quick Five.
7 prelims in a row, Duck. Do you subscribe?
That is correct.
For 3 wins only, though, Joey.
So now maybe that does answer the question then. Do you subscribe to the theory that the preliminary finals are the hardest games to win?
They are. They're really hard to win. Well, our first one, we got lost by a kick after the siren. So
that was Gary
the
Ablett?
Geelong one.
Yep.
So the second one got beaten by a better team and then made the next one. One of them we had a poorer team. So it depends on how fit you are. What I do love about the two teams that go in, and Port Adelaide, Melbourne in particular, they go in healthy, fit and strong. So I think if the prelims that we went in really healthy, we won them.
Yep.
Simple as that. The ones we didn't win. So they are hard to win. And everyone talks about and I guess when you get to that stage, everyone talks about grand finals, mate. You've got to get into there.
That's right. Yeah. You agree, Daisy?
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to narrow the focus and not let yourself drift too far ahead is one thing, but you're 100% right. The years where you have some interruptions going in, injury, a suspension or anything like that, everything has to be going perfect to win the games.
And really, it's because every player wants to play in a grand final. So that's your biggest moment up until the grand final is to win, to get into a grand final and experience the whole feel of a grand final. So that's as much of a pressure as it is once you're in a grand final.
Absolutely. And the other thing that you remember, obviously the finals changed when I first started, so that the system changed a little bit. So second played seventh, all that sort of stuff. But that doesn't matter because sometimes depends on which team you come up against. I mean, let's be honest, the Geelong-Melbourne side is probably, no disrespect to Port and Bulldogs, but that's the team. Many people thought that could be the grand final.
Yep.
All of a sudden you find yourself in that side of the draw. It's obviously more difficult to get in.
Yeah.
And as a player too, the prelim final is all fans.
Yes,
so
that's right.
The grand final, you get all the corporates and whatnot. The prelim final, the atmosphere, 100,000 at the G. Oh, I know it's not going to be that this year, but that is why you love it.
Who do you think they'll support? Melbourne? Do you think Melbourne will have the...
Damo, you have any idea
I think
over there which crowd have the bigger supporter base?
I'm relying on what I've heard in other media over here, guys, because I don't have a read of the town. But they're suggesting there's going to be a Geelong-based fan base, more so than Melbourne. And I don't know the origins of that. I don't know the whys of that.
Polly Farmer being a Geelong...
Well,
you
know what, Doug? It may well be. Bairstow, maybe. Yeah, I mean, it could be those reasons. Sometimes that is the origins of it.
Yep.
Just on the prelim final chats, too, guys. I mean, Hawthorn obviously made grand finals in 2012, 13, 14, 15, and obviously lost the prelim final in 11 as well. So for 4 years in a row, 2011, 12, 13 and 14, they were involved in prelim finals that were decided by a kick. Now, they lost the one in 2011, obviously, to Collingwood.
Somebody tackled Cyril late in that one, I think.
They did.
20 seconds. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But then...
You're
then
getting as bad as Duck with some of these, bring back these memories.
They're good memories, Joey.
Well, we
2012, where they made the grand final, they won by a kick over Adelaide when Stratton tackled Dangerfield late, and then 13-14, again, a kick wins against Geelong and Port Adelaide, and then only the third win of a row, the 2015 year, they had an easy prelim final. So that you're right about the unknown, Duck, when it comes to these games.
Well, here is a little nugget that might come on first crack, but I know you like getting a little
down
but
again.
in the last 10 years, 7 out of 10 years, right, there's been one prelim that's been decided by a kick, like Damo said. So 7 of the last 10 years. One of the prelims has been decided by a kick. So history says you get one. Generally, you get one absolute belter, and then you get one that's generally a team wins pretty comfortably. So you reckon it'll be the Geelong-Melbourne game is probably the close one.
Yeah,
We'll save that. We'll get
I'm
your
thinking
thoughts on
so.
it. We'll get your thoughts on those games after this. I want to whip through a couple more selection questions. So you spoke about the health of Port Adelaide.
Yep.
Mitch Georgiades played in the Sandful last week, went around all right. Do you think he comes into the side?
Yep.
Or do they leave the team unchanged from their win a couple of weeks ago?
I'd bring him in.
For Todd Marshall?
Ooh.
No.
Or for Laddams?
No.
For a small?
Motlop.
You'd play the 4 talls.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Okay.
Any reasons why?
I think he's had a really good year. I love the way he attacks it. He's got good speed. So I don't think you lose a lot by, and unfortunately Motlop has been a little bit in and out this year. I'd bring him in for Motlop.
What about the Western Bulldogs side of things, the ruck situation? We saw Oscar McInerney just torch Lewis Young early in that semi-final. Does Lewis Young hold his spot and the Western Bulldogs stick unchanged for a second week in a row? Or do they try Stephen Martin or try something different?
Oh, I can't believe they haven't tried Stephen Martin already, to be honest. Do they make a change for a prelim? Maybe not.
You're not going to lose much by bringing Stephen Martin in.
Yeah,
I think the gain's greater than the loss.
I just think that if he's got an effort in him, and only they know, Joey, this is a difficult question to answer because we don't know how he's been training. Yeah. We know that he's a training beast. We know that he loves it. If he's training at a really high level, I'd bring him in.
What about the difference between training at a high level and then the match conditioning of a preliminary final, which we know is like off the charts?
He turns 35 later this year too. I mean, it needs to be thrown in.
Might have missed the boat.
Too late. Here's another one about the Cats. Do they have to find a tagging option for Clayton Oliver or Christian Petrarca? Because Mark O'Connor's out. If you go back to the 2 times they've played Melbourne this year, Oliver and Petrarca have torched Geelong both times.
Who would they? Who though? Who can do it?
Do they do something like Jimmy Bartell in the 2009 grand final? All of a sudden went and tagged Lenny Hayes and put Lenny to sleep in the second half when Lenny was dominating. Do they just throw something that we haven't seen? Does Jed Buse go and tag?
Does Selwood do a full-on
tag role?
They have to.
You think they have to?
They have to. Oliver was the difference in the last game. He had 34 disposals, maybe even more, a couple of goals. They have to tag one of them. Geelong's biggest downfall in that first final was getting beaten by what you know. That was Aliir. They've got the blueprint of how to beat the Ds. That is to take one of those players out of the game.
Can they win going head-to-head?
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if they sent Selwood to someone like that.
Right. Which one, Duck? Which of the 2?
Selwood's Oliver.
Probably Oliver.
I think Petrarca's got too many tricks.
Yeah. Petrarca's a different kettle of fish.
The game of chess that you see, don't you? And staggeringly, there's 2 matchups on the weekend were all played out in round 23. How much, guys? I mean, you've all played the game at the highest level. How much would have been held back in those games, knowing that? No, hang on. You reckon they went full out in
I think in
round
the
23?
Last quarter. I think in the last quarter. I think subconsciously, I think Geelong put the
but how much of the coaches?
The coaches,
mate. Everyone thinks that coaches are all geniuses, and they are very good at what they do, obviously. But I think you give them too much. If you think they've got another 10 tricks up their sleeve that they're going to pull out the next time you play.
But Selwood playing on one of these 2 guys is one of those tricks.
No, that's true. That's true. Yeah. But let's be honest. Geelong had control of the game and dominated the game for 3 quarters. So that they would say, well, we did it. You know, and then what do you say? What, Goody had 5 tricks up his sleeve and then he pulled them out the last quarter. I think sometimes that's a bit of furphy.
Damo, I think they'd keep maybe 1 or 2. I think they would keep some card close to their chest. I was surprised that Mark O'Connor didn't start with a tag, and I think they maybe thought, look, this game isn't the be all and end all. Let's just keep this up our sleeve.
I know what they've got up their sleeve.
Yeah,
the Cats.
More goals.
Cats. I know what they'll say. So in that game, they kicked it straight to Lever. This time they'll say, hey, let's not kick it to Lever. Oh, that's tricky.
It's a good idea. Have you ever thought about coaching?
But they did that a lot, by the way.
Yeah,
in that particular
that's
game.
exactly right. But that was
Yeah.
going into Port Adelaide. That's the one thing you can't do is kick it to Alir.
Yeah.
And for the best part of a quarter and a half, they kicked it straight to Alir. So maybe they are, to your point, they aren't as smart as we think.
All right, last question before we have a bit of a deep dive and preview the two big preliminary finals. This question I'm going to ask to all of you: who is under more pressure in the Geelong-Melbourne game? Which team is facing the biggest pressure? That if they lose, there is more of, I suppose, a bit of a failure. Is it the Cats who have been there so many times, or if it's Melbourne who's been the best team all year and been on top of the ladder?
It comes up all the time because people want the underdog tag, and you're under more pressure because I think it sits fair down the middle with these two, because Melbourne have been the best team. They're fit, they're healthy. Geelong because they've recruited for the now, so I think it's dead set down the middle for me.
I think it sits right on Melbourne. With their history, haven't been there for so long, their ability to be the best team throughout the entire season, to stumble at the second last hurdle, it'd break Melbourne supporters'
What do you reckon?
hearts.
Wow, I think there's more pressure on Geelong. I think this is Geelong's last chance. I think Melbourne, look, if they lose, they'll be shattered. But I think Melbourne can butter up and say, right, we steal ourselves, we go again. I've got a feeling this is Geelong's last chance at a flag. They're all in right now. So I think there's more pressure on the Cats. Damo?
I'm with Daisy in the way he articulated the Melbourne answer to that question. The 1964 component, the fact they've gone through top of ladder after home and away season, they're not thinking right now they're going to fall short, and to fall short to me means they're under more pressure. We've been saying about Geelong that this is their last role for, I reckon, 10 years. We're almost saying it the year Chris Scott took over when Gary Ablett took off. So, look, they'll re-top again somehow, and they'll continue to be in the top 4 to 6, I reckon, for the foreseeable future. So, yeah, Melbourne for me.
Whose supporters are more nervous?
Melbourne. Melbourne supporters are they're pulling their
100%.
necks.
Geelong
They
have
are that
Geelong have
nervous.
had recent success.
Yeah.
of
Melbourne
course
supporters
Melbourne.
are that nervous. It's not funny. Now let's take a look at the two big preliminary finals, because this, as we said, the hardest game of the year to win. The 4 best teams are in the prelims. Duck, I want to start with the Port Adelaide Western Bulldogs game, because we've had a bit of a talk about Melbourne and the Cats, but do you give the Western Bulldogs any sort of chance?
Yeah, I do. I think they just scrap and fight. Their defence has been the thing, and they've been able to manufacture goals. They got goals out of the midfield, which they're going to have to do again, by the way, Joey.
Yep.
Can they do that against Port? Look, I think Port Adelaide, because of their fitness, the fact that it's in Adelaide, the fact that they've had the build-up, they're fresh, they're ready to go, I think Port will win, but I don't think it'll be a big margin.
Unfortunately for Dog supporters, I think this one will be a blowout. I think Port will just bring the heat, bring the pressure right from go and just run away with it. The Dogs have done it the hard way. We know that. They've been all around the country. I just think Port's, the way they dismantled Geelong in that first final, they'll do the exact same thing to the Western Bulldogs. The Western Bulldogs will invite that pressure because they go back to what they know. That's flick the handball around. That just invites the pressure. Port turnover. See you later.
They might.
I think it's game on, Joey. A really close game all the way through. I just feel that Port will be able to reverse the painful result they got last year by the kick when Dusty got on top of them. I think they will win the game by a kick to 2 kicks max.
Fair I say, last year it wasn't Dusty, it was Nan Curvis that got on top of him in that prelim. He took about
He kicked
4
the goal,
marks.
though, didn't he? And he's still best on ground, I think, Dusty, in that game too, Doug. But you're right. Nan Curvis had a massive game and a massive final series.
What's unique about these two prelims, as you said, Damo, these sides only played about 3-4 weeks ago. So you actually get a really good form line and a reference point to look back on. And the Western Bulldogs lost by a couple of points to Port Adelaide, and they played really ordinary that night. And if you have a look at the numbers, it was only the second time McRae had under 30 touches for the year. Bontempelli was non-existent. He had 15 disposals. Libba had 17. Dunkley and Treloar had no influence. I don't think the Western Bulldogs, those midfielders, will have those lower numbers again. So to lose by 2 points and have little influence from their gun mids, it must give them some chance. Now, I'm probably agree with you guys. They're probably more banged up. They've travelled around the country. Port are cherry ripe, and I think this is their moment to get to the grand final they've been searching for. But I think it'll be a bit closer than people might think.
Do they Dogs tag? Because last time it was Boak and Wines who were the difference in that game. That was, again, the last round of the season. Let them do and go at will and do what they wanted. Do they tag?
I would like to see Libba go after one of the opposition, because Will and Drew went to Libba in that game, kept him to 17 disposals.
And they'll do the same.
So why don't they set Libba to Travis Boak and say, you try and just take out Travis?
We'll try to run around in a 3.
Maybe he can't run with Travie Boak, though, outside the contest. Maybe he goes to Ollie Wines. and limits his influence. Again, these are the tactical battles that they can learn a lot from last time that we don't know, and it's going to be a fascinating prelim. The other one, the Melbourne-Geelong prelim, we want to get your take. Duck, I know you said it'll be a cracking game. Just give us why you think one team will win.
I think defence. That's why. So I just think that they've been rock solid all year, Melbourne, and I think May and Lever and Hibberd and the others down there will be able to curtail this Geelong forward line. I think if you can keep Hawkins quiet, Hawkins is the key to the Cats. We saw that on the weekend. 5 goals. He was brilliant. And not only the 5 goals, but what he does and brings teammates into the game. I just think that if May can do a job on him, then I think Melbourne win.
Daisy, how much of a factor, though, does experience play? Being in a prelim in previous years, understanding what it feels like. I mean, Melbourne played in one in 2018, so it's not that long ago. But does the experienced Cats help them?
Well.
Yeah, they're 61-point loss in that one.
Exactly.
Look, it plays some factor, I think, especially if it gets tight late. You've got the experience to keep a level head. I think the Ds, if they can start well, and I preface it with that, if they can start well, bring out all that energy and enthusiasm they would have had for missing the week, and they've been built up, they've been locked up. If they can bring that early and bring the heat to Geelong, I think, again, they can kick away and win it quite comfortably. The interesting one will be Radaglia, because he, for a bloke who has 5 touches, he is important to that lineup. We saw when the Western Bulldogs were good enough to beat the Ds late in the season, I think it was round 16, they went in really tall that night, and they kept the Melbourne defenders as silos. So if Radaglia can keep one as a silo, if you can get Tomahawk, you can get Jeremy Cameron, if you get some one-on-ones, the Melbourne defenders can be exposed, but I still think that the ball won't be down there enough for them to have any influence.
How good is it, Joey, going into these games? There's certain individuals, I said this last week, but guys like May and Hawkins and these guys
matchups.
and Dixon, they know, Hawkins knows, if I play well, we're more than likely to win, and May knows if he beats Hawkins, they're likely to win. I mean, the pressure of that. Yeah. I mean, that's what you miss about footy. Yeah. That nervousness and that fear before you go out onto the ground, going, with the what ifs that are just running around in your head. Those players are having those thoughts as of now, and it's about trying to keep them out for as long as you can. It's a great time.
Damo?
Yeah, I'm going for Geelong, Joey. As the week gets closer to the game, I've done my own internal thinkings, and I've swung it around.
Wow.
Where's your whiteboard with the names and the
yeah, I know. It's not that scientific, Duck. It's just a gut feel. It's a head feel. No, look, Duncan returning, Tui returning, massive ins. To Daisy's point, Radaglia, massive in. They're differences from that round 23 game. They were 42 points up. That was good enough without those 3. I think they enhance their capabilities, and they just had to do what they did last week. Got the easy kill they needed just to get back to top 4, and it's where they were always going to be in their own minds, and here they are again. I think they're going to get through again for a second consecutive year.
Any retractions from you 3 blokes or apologies after last week? The Oracle just declaring that the Cats by how far and then the Western Bulldogs will win, or the only Brisbane Lions will be doubting themselves for how poorly they were against the D. So I think this will be an upset as well. I think the Western Bulldogs.
Daisy Thomas is the Oracle.
No, he's not. You're not claiming that as the Oracle.
Listen, Daisy,
I was the only one who needed to get 2 right.
Daisy,
I am the Oracle.
They won by a point, and Brisbane should have won.
And
Brisbane,
so your tip was wrong and mine was right by a point.
Okay.
For what it's worth, I'm with Duck. I think Melbourne just need to play the way they've played all year, and I think they'll be okay. I think the Cats need to play almost exceptionally well. They certainly can do it, but I think Melbourne in a close one. It's going to be a cracking prelim finals weekend anyway. We can't wait, and then we'll get into the big dance. But, of course, don't forget you can listen to both massive preliminary finals this weekend on Triple M and the Listener app, starting with Friday night between Melbourne and the Cats from 6 p.m. with Howie Das, Brownie, Chief and Damien Barrett. Damo, thanks for joining us from quarantine. Enjoy when you get out. Duck, you can go back and enjoy the sun. Days, you can keep getting fitter and fitter by the week, and I'll just keep enjoying myself. This has been another edition of Triple M's Midweek Rub.